This lesson covers the solving equations notes. So when we solve an equation, we have to undo each operation by doing the order of operations in reverse order. So we're trying to get rid of everything on the side with the variable. We're trying to get that variable by itself no matter which side it's on. So we have to undo all that stuff or all the operations that are being done to the variable. All right, so make sure both sides of the equal sign are simplified. And we'll talk about that later on. That's just a step that's in there, but this lesson will not cover that right now. But basically, we talked about simplifying an expression, and that's what we're going to be doing later on, getting rid of the parentheses and getting rid of the like terms. But these ones we're doing now are not going to have those. All right, this means there can be no parentheses, and you must combine any like terms, like I just mentioned. In step 2, you have to use inverse or the opposite operations to get the variable isolated by itself on one side of the equal sign. When solving an equation, it is important to keep it balanced. Remember, equations have an equal sign and it means both sides are equal, so we have to keep it balanced. Therefore, what we do on one side of the equation must be done on the other side. Here's the first simple equation. 2x plus 14 equals 20. We recommend drawing a line down the middle of the equal sign. This just tells you that this equation must be balanced and that you have to do the same operations on each side. Now, when I look on the side with the variable, in this case the variable's on the left, I can see that the x is being multiplied with 2, and then you've got 14 being added to all that. So we've got multiplying 2 and adding 14. So we have to get rid of both of those operations just to get x by itself. We recommend that you get rid of the lonely one first. And that means the one that is not furthest away from the variable. In this case, it would be the 14. It is farther away from the x. Since there's plus 14 over here, to get rid of adding 14 to one side, we subtract 14. If we subtract 14 on one side of the equation, then we have to subtract 14 on the other side of the equation, just like this. Now draw a line, because you're going to be doing some operations here. 2x doesn't have anything I can add or subtract it to, so it's going to come down. But the 14 minus 14 is 0. So I don't write 0 here, I don't need to. I can just bring down that 2x. 20 minus 14 is 6, and be sure to write the equal sign here. The next number I have to get rid of is this 2, and the operation that 2 is doing with x is multiplication. The opposite of multiplication is division, so I have to divide by 2 to get rid of it. If I divide by 2 on the left side, then I have to do it on the right side as well. On the left side, 2 divided by 2 gives me 1x, but we don't normally write 1x, we just write x. 6 divided by 2 is 3. We just found that x equals 3. If we needed to check this, then we would take this 3 and plug it into the original equation for x to look like this. 2 times 3 plus 14 equals 20. I would do the math on the left side of the equation. 2 times 3 plus 14, you could plug that in your calculator and you would find that it equals 20. So I get 20 equals 20. Since both sides equal the same thing, then I feel confident that I solved this equation correctly and that 3 is the answer for x. The next equation is 6x equals 36. Again, draw your line down the middle on the equal sign to remind yourself that you must keep the equation balanced and do the same thing to both sides. On the side with x, the only operation taking place over here is that x is being multiplied with 6. If I want to get x by itself, I have to get rid of multiplying by 6. So I do the opposite of multiplication, and I divide by 6. Since I divided by 6 on the left side, then I have to divide by 6 also on the right side. On the left side, 6 divided by 6 equals 1. I get 1x. But again, we don't usually write a 1 in front of a variable. We would just write x. 36 divided by 6 is 6. And again, to check this, I would take this 6 and plug it in for x in the original equation. So 6 times 6 equals 36. I would do the math on this side, and I get 36 equals 36. By checking your answer, you're confirming that you've solved this equation correctly. Okay, this next example has the variable on the right side instead of the left side, but you would solve for x the same way as if the variable were on the left side. So again, draw your line down the middle. When we're solving an equation, we're trying to get the variable by itself on one side. In this case, our variable is going to end up on the right side. Notice that the operations on the side with x are that it's being multiplied by -2 and 32 is being added to it. So I have to use inverse operations to get rid of all of the numbers on the side with x. The first one I get rid of is the lonely one here. Remember, it's the one that's not furthest away from x or not beside x. Since 32 is being added, the opposite of addition is subtraction, so I have to subtract 32. And again, what we do to one side of the equation, we have to do to the other side. So I have to subtract 32 from the other side. Draw your line here. This line tells you that I'm doing some operations. 32, positive 32, minus 32 is 0. So we don't need to write that. We can just cross it out. Bring down the negative 2x. On the left side, I would punch in my calculator, negative 15 minus 32. Be really careful with your operations here and use your calculator. Negative 15 minus 32 is negative 47. I still don't have x by itself. It's being multiplied with negative 2. The opposite of multiplying by negative 2 is dividing by negative 2. So I'm going to do that on both sides. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1x. Again, we don't write that 1, we would just write x. Negative 47 divided by negative 2 is positive 23.5. And again, be very careful. Plug this in your calculator and watch your signs. If I want to check this, I do it the same way as we've done the others. I take this value for x, because I'm saying x is equal to 23.5, and I replace x in the original equation. So this is what it would look like. Negative 15 equals negative 2 times 23.5, and in this case I'm using parentheses to show multiplication, plus 32. On the left side, we have negative 15, and then in my calculator, I would punch negative 2 times 23.5 plus 32 and hit the equals button, and you should have gotten negative 15. This step here, just plugging it in and checking it, helps you to know that you got this right. If both of these numbers, or the number on each side of the equal sign is the same, then you know you have this correct. Okay, in this next equation, the variable's on the left side. However, we've got a number in front of the term with the variable. Again, draw your line down the middle, down the equal sign. Let's take a look at the operations being done on the side with a, because we're trying to get a all by itself. I've got a multiplied by a negative 2, and then also 4 is being added to that. So be really careful. Notice there's no sign in front of this 4, so it's assumed that this is a positive 4, plus 4. When we solve these, we have to get rid of the lonely one first, or the one that's furthest from a. It is this 4 right here. Remember, it is a positive 4 because the sign in front of it is plus. So to get rid of positive 4 plus 4, we have to subtract 4 because the opposite of adding is subtracting. If I subtract it from the left side, I have to subtract it from the right side. Draw your line to show that you're getting ready to do some calculations. 4 minus 4 is 0. I don't need to write that. So I'm just going to bring down that negative 2a. Bring down that minus sign. This is a negative 2a. 10 minus 4 is 6. Now, I still don't have the variable by itself. It's being multiplied by negative 2. To get rid of multiplying by negative 2, I'll divide by negative 2. If I do it on one side, I must do it on the other side of the equal sign. Negative 2 divided by negative 2 is 1, which we're just going to cross out. It becomes a. 6 divided by negative 2 is negative 3. And now that I've gotten the variable all by itself, I don't need to do anything else. The answer is a equals negative 3. But I would strongly recommend that you plug this into the original equation to make sure you have it correct. So 4 minus 2 times a here, and we know that a is negative 3, so instead of a, I'm going to put negative 3, equals 10. And when you plug the left side in your calculator right here, you should get 10. On the right side, I have 10. Since these two numbers are equal, then that means that I have this a value correct. Alright, this next one has negative r minus a negative 4 equals negative 18. Again, draw your line down the middle to solve it. You'll notice the first thing that we do is get rid of the lonely one. This is minus a negative 4. That is a bad word in math. It is a bad word. We want you to change it. Minus a negative is plus. Remember the same add opposites last year? In Math 7, minus a negative becomes a plus sign. Now we're ready to solve. Alright, so if you ever see that where you have a plain old number and you've got minus a negative, you need to change that to a plus. So to solve this, we've got to get rid of the lonely one first, this adding 4. The opposite of adding 4 is subtracting 4. If I subtract it on one side, I have to subtract it on the other. Then draw your horizontal line to show that you need to do some operations. 4 minus 4 is 0. We wanted to get rid of that 4, and that's exactly what we did. So we're left with a negative r here. We're going to bring that down. Negative 18 minus 4. Be really careful that you punch this in your calculator the way it should be. Negative 18 minus 4 is negative 22. It kind of looks like we have r by itself, but you'll notice there is a negative right here in front of r. Our variable must be positive. It cannot have a negative sign in front of it. Otherwise, we have not finished solving. Therefore, there is a number right here in front of r that we don't see, and it is a 1. This is negative 1 times r. So to get rid of this negative 1 times r, I do the opposite of multiplying by negative 1, and I divide by negative 1 on both sides. We get r on the left side. Negative 22 divided by negative 1 is positive 22. So r equals 22. And again, check your answer. Put it in the original equation. I'm going to take this 22 and replace r with it right here. Keep the negative. Negative is in front of r, and instead of r, I'll put 22 minus a negative 4. And you can place this whole expression in your calculator, and when you do, you should get negative 18 on the left side, which equals negative 18 on the right side. This tells me that when I solve for r, I solve correctly.